Joining us tonight as we embark on this next application cycle. I'm really excited to be a part of this. I'm Emma Fields, and I'm at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. I'm a program director there, and I'm also, reminder to mute your mics, and I'm also part of ADROP. Very involved in radiation oncology education through the ROCSIG, or Radiation Oncology Education Collaborative Study Group. Have some other roles within ABS. I do a lot of really cool brachytherapy procedures and primarily treat GI and GYN. And it's funny because I remember I've just been in practice 7 years, and it honestly feels like, you know, a year or two ago that I was sitting right in your shoes, trying to figure out how to navigate the match and how to get into a radiation oncology residency, and, you know, what would the future be once I did. So I'm really happy to be on this side of it and get to, you know, hopefully guide you through and give you some pointers. Ken, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Ken Oliver. I am the program director at Mayo Clinic. Actually, I'm now the assistant program director. I turn that over to Kim Corbin, my partner in crime here. I am the current president of ADROP. Emma and I are partners in crime in that endeavor. I help in ROCSIG. I was program director for 7 years, and I've been out of residency. I was just looking at my diploma, which is on the wall behind me here, since 2002. So I'm 18 years in the field, and when I went into residency, it was just the advent of VEGF inhibitors, and all my friends emailed me and called me and said, well, you're not going to have a job, so maybe you should switch to insert a random specialty here. So I am also familiar with that doom and gloom associated with the field sometimes.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next slide. So just topics. The idea of this brief slide set is just to, you know, just introduce some of the topics that I know are hot topics, and just let you know that we're thinking about them, and give you some just a short background on some of these things, and then we'll open it up obviously to your questions that have been pre-sent in, and I believe some live questions as well. Next. So last year's match obviously did not go the way that anybody would have hoped it to go. There's lots and lots of talk about, you know, residency program expansion. We all know that's happened for various reasons, and mostly, you know, it's not great. So there were almost 100 or 190 spots offered. Already when the applications came in, we knew that there weren't enough applicants to fill those spots. And so we were seeing a common trend from the year before. And then when the match happened, there were a large proportion of unmatched programs. And I hate to say it, but we were one of those. Myself and Dr. Oliver, as well as a group of really involved program directors, you know, participated in that journal publication, Cleaning Without the Soap, which was really just a catchy title to try and encourage program directors and programs to go unmatched and to try and, you know, tighten up our specialty a bit more and really reserve the spots that we have for people who were primarily interested in radiation oncology. I stuck to my guns. Many did not. So lots of people participated in the SOAP, and 27 of the 33 positions filled, mostly with people who were not initially interested in radiation oncology. So about 15% of the incoming class for next calendar year were not people who initially wanted radiation oncology. So we definitely have our work set out for us. But it doesn't mean that there's not a spot for people who really are interested. And honestly, those are the people that we're really looking for. Next. So for moving forwards, how do you apply in 2020 when we're already coming off of this very bad match year? Now we're dealing with this pandemic. The whole world really has changed. Everything's gone virtual. Many people can't leave their medical schools. Some people can't even go to class in their medical school. They're doing all virtual learning. There's really not many away rotations. I'll talk to you about that. And for interviews, we're hoping everybody's going to be doing that virtually. So I'll show you how you can prepare for that. Next. Dr. Khan at Oregon Health Sciences University, who just graduated from our program and is fantastic, has launched the Rover series that I think many of you have probably participated in. And as part of her website, which is listed below, she has all of the programs, or at least many of them, I guess, that she's reached out to who are offering virtual rotations for both students at their programs as well as away. Oregon is one of them. We're one of them. There's also Yale, Harvard, Moffitt. So there's programs all over the country that are accommodating students virtually. So there's a few websites coming up here, and I'm sure these slides will be made available to you if you want more information. Next. Another great resource, this was written by Dr. Olivier in the AAMC. They sort of were asking programs to give some information about how their specialty was dealing with the current pandemic. So this is the specialty COVID response. Next. And what the statement actually looks like is giving you some tips on how you can still be mentored, how you can still get advice. And this is especially important for people who are coming from places where maybe you don't have your own program, or maybe your program is one that's sort of a private practice that's sort of linked to your medical school. There's lots of ways to reach out to mentors within the specialty who are passionate about the specialty, and ways to get advice and also to get involved if you're interested. And so this is the direct link to that report and a little brief blurb on that. Next. And then also through the AAMC I mentioned, as part of the ADROP, so the Association of Directors in Radiation Oncology Programs, we're really encouraging all programs to offer virtual interviews. And this is something that we've worked on also with Dr. Zeitman at the Harvard Radiation Oncology Programs. And I actually think it's very cool. It's unfortunate that it's, you know, sparked by the pandemic. But gosh, when I was interviewing and driving around from place to place, I took out an extra $10,000 loan and rented cars. I'm driving through like streets. I have no idea where I am in the middle of the night. You know, I'm thinking this is dangerous, this is expensive. And this is kind of a waste of everyone's time when you're going to, you know, 12 plus, some people go up to like 20 some places they visit, and you just end up in one. So, you know, doing this virtually, I think is a really nice way to get a snapshot of the program. We're going to still try and encourage people to have their residents participate, have as much of their faculty participate, give you a flavor of the program. But this is a resource that you can use to also prepare for that. I know you're probably a lot more tech savvy than many of the faculty who will be interviewing you, but it's nice to have a resource. Next. And then, of course, the job market. There's so much on this. And unfortunately, Student Doctor Network seems to be the resource that everybody looks to for this. I have to say, I am happy with my job every single day. So I don't really understand a lot of the things people write. I have a brand new resident working with me right now. He's been with me for about a week. And last night he said, "This has been the best day ever. I've been waiting for this for like whatever many years, 6 years." You know, he's just so full of excitement and energy. And I was like, I know, I feel like that every day. So I think, you know, there's lots of people who still have that vibrance and really know that our specialty is important. And additionally, we've been continuing to work, pretty much full capacity during the pandemic. I know some clinics dropped back initially, and I think we had a big fear about that as screening dipped. But the importance of our clinics has never been greater. When our patients are scared, we're still taking excellent care of them. So I think there really will be jobs available in the same sort of pattern. And, looking at my residents over the past, at least, thinking to the last 3 years, we've had residents get excellent jobs, both in academic and private practices. I think the real key is, you do have to have some realism to that. So making sure that you're picking, a location that's realistic. It can't just have one practice, with 2 docs that are new, because you do have to, prepare for some turnover. And you can't really start up your own practice like with family medicine. But to turn it back over to questions, we really look forward to working with all of you and hopefully getting a chance to meet you during this interview cycle. And if you go to the next slide, part of this is to hope make things a bit more smooth sailing. Both Dr. Oliver and I are more than happy to be resources to you, of course, during this session, but also afterwards. So please reach out to us on Twitter or on our email addresses is great too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fields. And hi, everyone. I'm Emily Merfeld. I'm one of the ACRO resident committee members. And so at this time, I'm going to ask Comron Hassanzadeh, who is our ACRO resident committee president, to introduce himself as well, because I don't think he's done that yet. And then I'm going to start asking some of the questions that you all have answered via the Google form over the last few weeks. And if any questions come up throughout the next, we'll go until 7 p.m. Central. If any more questions come up, I'll continue to check that Google form throughout this next hour. And so feel free to continue submitting questions. So Comron.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. And thank you, Dr. Fields, for that great presentation. My name is Comron Hassanzadeh. I am a PGY4 resident at Washington University. And I'm the this year's ACRO resident committee chair. And I also serve as assistant chief resident at WashU. So thank you all for joining us. We had a lot of interest for this webinar, and I'm happy to see that. And hopefully we can help to answer your questions today.
Great. So the first question is, should I try and attend a virtual away rotation? And if my 4th year schedule is already full, will that be okay if I don't?
I'm going to take a crack. Emily, you did such a great job on your talk. I think that it's nice if you can do it. I don't think it's mandatory. One thing I think Emma's slideshow reminds us is that residents are in the driver's seat. If you're on this call and you are making your way through medical school, doing reasonably well, you will match in this specialty. Emma, Dr. Fields, runs a fantastic residency program. They place residents in outstanding academic centers with excellent training, and she didn't match. So outstanding programs have spots, and you, as an interested applicant, will find a spot to match. And so I don't think you have to. What those programs, what those processes get you is more evidence that you're committed to this specialty. Radiation oncology is a very niche specialty. People that I think in the past, people have gone into it for various reasons, probably not all positive, either for reimbursement issues or because it was competitive at points and they just wanted to be in a competitive specialty. But now I think a compassionate, trained physician that was trained in the US medical school, DO or MD, will match, period. And it's just the question of showing that enthusiasm for the specialty so that we don't wonder what your interests are, and finding the best home for you in terms of your interest in training, and where you can be successful and happy. Emma, thoughts?
I absolutely agree. You know, I think the real benefit is just to get a little bit more experience, perhaps get a letter. But honestly, I think program directors are going to really shift the way that they're evaluating applications this year. We're going to be looking much more, like Dr. Oliver said, we're going to be looking much more for character throughout the application. So I think the personal statement is always hugely important. But then letters of recommendation, it's going to be much more about telling about your character and your interest. And those letters are going to be maybe from a radiation oncologist if you have somebody you've worked with, or a home program, but maybe also from a medical oncologist or from a surgeon that you've worked with. And then it's going to be looking at how you've done on some of those rotations, and just, you know, how you've performed and how your ethic is throughout your trajectory. But I think the virtual away rotations are really just a bonus, and a little bit of time maybe to get to know some of the residents. I know one of our students is on the call, and he just did a virtual rotation with us. And, you know, just having some more interaction with the residents and seeing what their life is like on a day-to-day basis, even virtually, is actually a nice thing, because that's something that you can't always know just from a brief, you know, interview day. So that would be the one additional benefit.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Dr. Fields and Dr. Oliver have said, I think, you know, as someone who was applying 4 years ago, you know, I think virtual rotations are a great way to get more exposure to the field. If you maybe haven't gotten so much exposure during medical school, especially if you don't have a radiation oncology program in your home institution, I think it's a great way to do that. And also, you know, as Dr. Field said, it's another way to get your name out there, especially if the program you're interested in is offering a virtual rotation. This is just another way to get your name out and maybe get a letter of recommendation that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get.
So I think that leads really well into the next question, which was, how can we show interest in a program when an away rotation with that program is not an option?
You first, Emma.
Did you say when that program does not have an away rotation?
Yeah, so I guess besides doing a virtual away rotation, how else can I show that I'm interested in a particular program?
That's a great question.
I have a thought.
I mean, you know, I think that, you know, we have to be careful because we still do have to follow match rules. Certainly in the past, I know I personally have been, you know, emailed and approached. I don't know that that's always really the right thing to do. To me, I think a great thing to do would be to connect with some of the residents at that program. I think that's always fair game. And then I would just really enhance your personal statement when you're actually applying, and just, you know, saying, I'm really interested, you know, geographically, and also maybe with what you're actually doing. Mention some of the research that's going on or what you're specifically drawn to. I'm trying to think of ways other people have done this in the past. I mean, it's probably fair game also to reach out to the program coordinators and see if there's an opportunity for, I don't know, even like shadowing, or a way to connect or join into a morning conference or a tumor board or something else that's going on. Some of those opportunities that are virtual now, just to, you know, participate and, you know, get your name, and also, you know, see if you actually would like it and fit in.
I think it's also, in this year, in I don't know, maybe next year, who knows too, it's okay to ping the program director if you have a very strong interest and you are just saying, hey, I can't come to your place, but here's my interest in your program, to try to get through the door in terms of interviews. we have been there's a series of papers on the match communication, how that can be make residents or applicants feel that they either have to, it's obligatory, or there's some influence that program directors are putting on residents, and we've cut back on that a lot, but mostly we think about that post-interview. Like we don't want to disrupt your process of the match after you've interviewed here. And even then, when I've always accepted questions, like I remember when you talked about this, Dr. Oliver, and I just wanted to clarify how that would impact my rotations there. I've always entertained that. We've just tried to avoid, like, I think of you, Dr. Murfield, as our number one. You know, those things we've shied away from. And that gamesmanship, I can foresee that being a problem in this next match cycle because people may be worried about matching as program directors. But from a resident's point of view, it's a very innocent process to say, hey, here's what's going on. You shouldn't feel obligated. That's this idea of love letters. Do I have to write a love letter to Dr. Fields saying, I really want to be at VCU and I'll do anything and you're my number one? No, you don't. Authentic communications with those programs where you say, well, this is what I see. I love brachytherapy. I would love to make a career in brachytherapy, and I would, you know, those kind of things. I think you're trying to find synergy with them. And that's what people do in a job application, you know, when you apply for a job.
I think the key is the authenticity.
Authenticity, exactly.
Not the like mass, like where you can tell that they just changed, you know,
right.
Dr. Oliver to Field.
Sometimes we're getting to change the font. We've seen it all, but yes.
Okay.
And I guess to add another way, if you can't attend a virtual away rotation, I've asked a lot of residents how their programs are planning to reach out to applicants if they're not doing a virtual away rotations. And I've heard that a lot of applicants a lot of programs, I should say, are doing virtual meet and greets. So I think programs in the next probably month or so should be posting for virtual meet and greets to just talk with the program directors and residents of programs. And even that is a way to connect and, you know, have some FaceTime given the current circumstances that we're in.
And I do think that the residents are doing that mostly by their own enthusiasm, which tells you that the residents in the field who are actually doing the work and see exactly what's going on in the field, although they would tell you that the field is not perfect, that the field is good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing meet and greets with students. So just remember that. The noisiest voices sometimes are people who are not actually residents and don't, I think, necessarily understand the field very comprehensively. And so if it was all bad, the residents wouldn't be advocating for fellow students to join.
What about letters of recommendation? How might I get those if I can't do an elective? And is there any thought on changing the expectation regarding letters of recommendation?
We do address this in the AAMC thing that Emma pointed out to you, and every program that written there, but when I wrote that, when we organized that together, Emma and I, address this specific thing that it can be hard to get letters of recommendation in your specialty that you're choosing depending on where you're at, and that's okay. The best letters are not from the known person. I'm sure Emma could verify this, and I've read thousands of them over 18 years. The best letters are from somebody, and it can be a radiation oncologist, but it doesn't have to be, that says, M. Field is the best, one of the best students that I've rotated with, and here's why. Those are the letters that you want. It doesn't have to be from a radiation oncologist. When the coin of the realm was, you know, it's so hard to get in, yes, most of those were from radiation oncologists, but that's a different time. And I think creating relationships in your medical school where people say, I want to advocate for Emily Murfeld, and I want to make sure she matches in a great spot, and I'm willing to do the effort for a great letter. That speaks volumes to me. It doesn't matter what the specialty is, you know, maybe the clerk at your grocery store is not going to cut a good letter, but any physician that participated in your training is more than capable of writing a great letter.
And I think it's going to be a problem not just for radiation oncology applicants, or not a problem, but it's going to be a change from prior years. So don't feel like, you know, you're the only specialty that aren't getting all letters from radiation oncologists or anesthesiologists or whatever it is. You know, we all know we're all in the same thing. None of us have traveled either. We all are living, you know, in a different world, and so we get it. And just to sort of echo Dr. Oliver's point, I mean, I've seen so many letters from very prominent like chair people that say like 2 sentences, and you know that they just, you know, whipped it off in a second, and it was probably the same thing they wrote for the other 10 students that went through the department. So I actually think this year could be very refreshing, and fun to read some different letters. And, you know, it's actually going to be a bit harder work for the program directors, because we're used to kind of teasing out like, well, I know if, you know, Dr. Beth Erickson says you're in the top 1%, she really means it, because I've got one next to that saying that you're in the top, you know, 15% of students she's ever worked with. And usually we have like, you know, probably like 15 from her that we can kind of, you know, rank based on her numbers. So this is going to be, you know, unique and I think fun to actually really get to know you all, based on what people who really know you write about.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of those sentiments. I think personally, I came from a program that didn't have a home institution radiation oncology program. So one of my letters came from one of the internal medicine doctors that I rotated with, who I felt could speak to my character and my work ethic. So I think we'll probably see more of that, as we're not able to do as many away rotations. And on my interview trail, I got a lot of positive comments from that letter of recommendation from people who are interviewing me. So I think they can be benefit to your application as well.
So we've gotten several questions about, will there be a change in the number of interview invitations extended to applicants? Will there be a limitation on the number of interviews that an individual applicant can go on, or, you know, virtually go on? Can anyone speak to that?
That's Emma's. Emma is running our point person on that.
Okay, so we have talked so much about this, and this is really just my opinion. So this is not, you know, the blanket statement for how everybody feels about this. You know, obviously we're in this year where we're making change after change after change, and, you know, we're all, you know, testing our resilience, and we're quite, you know, we're getting used to this. So obviously we're changing to a virtual interview platform. Lots of program coordinators are completely like stressed out and overwhelmed because they run the point on the interview process. We have teamed up with AROPC, which is the group of coordinators, and they're a phenomenal group. Gosh, they're so organized and they're so well connected. And pretty much every year in the past, they've organized a big spreadsheet of when the interview dates are. And they have this great email system. So when they're coming up with their own programs interview dates, they connect regionally and make sure that applicants can get from like, you know, Charlottesville to Richmond and then on to like Baltimore or whatever makes sense. And they've been doing this the whole time. So we've enlisted their help to try and make it so that with virtual interviews, applicants on both coasts and anywhere in the middle have the opportunity to go to any interview they want to, by accommodating different time zones and also offering enough dates that even if you get plenty of interviews, you know, you're not per se snatching them from someone else or getting bumped out by not being like the first or second to email back. It's been proposed to us, the exact question about whether we should cap the number of interviews people are allowed to go on or the number of students programs are allowed to interview. and it's not that I think they're bad ideas. I just think having too many changes in 1 year is going to be maybe come off wrong, especially when our specialty needs a boost, and lots of programs already feel a bit rabbit holed. We have to, you know, obviously create some sort of media about our programs. We have to figure out a whole different way of interviewing, and then to just constrain people, both you guys applying and programs trying to sort this all out, maybe seems like a bit much. I don't know. So my thought is we should just sort of do an open, see how it goes, but try and, you know, be accommodating. I think programs are going to have to offer more dates, because really people can't stay on a Zoom meeting all day. So the proposed format is half day Zoom interviews. Something just crashed in my house, don't worry. But so they would be like morning and then evening, so that again, people on different time zones can be accommodated, but there'll be several of those for each program, even though sometimes some programs only have 2 interview dates or 4 interview dates. There'll be many more options, is my thought.
And, you know, it's such a tricky thing. In the thing is, we don't know. We don't know we should be restricting it. And our view has been, we want to be as inclusive. We want as many programs to participate in virtual interviews as possible. That benefits the residents the most. And because it's less competitive at this field at the moment, I know people are worried about hoarding of interviews. Like some people might take 20 because they can logistically. I just find it hard to believe that would happen, but you know, it's an ongoing discussion, I should say. And you know, Emma and I are not perfect, and we will occasionally make a mistake. And so maybe we're going to make a mistake. I don't know, but all I can say is we're doing our best. So we're listening to everybody about it.
Okay, great. How can people prepare for a virtual interview, and how can they stand out in a virtual interview?
I don't think it's going to be hugely different. Besides, you're not going to have a handshake. If you read interview tactics, of course, the handshake is a super important first step in interview, and you're not going to have that. Most everything else applies. It's eye contact, warmth of the person of which you're talking to, adaptation to this weird format, but everybody else is in the same boat. Connecting to the residents in these breakout rooms and finding common ground. You know, it's those things are not, I don't think, will change in any meaningful way. We had this great ROCSIG lead off this last year with Emma as part of that organizing group. And it really showed me how strong a Zoom meeting can create community, and people can really enjoy those interactions. So I'm optimistic, honestly. I mean, you can't come in, I don't know, a t-shirt and
Right.
Sunglasses. You
Wear
know, that's
pants.
not gonna work. Yeah, right. Don't push it too far. But everything else, I think your natural ability to relate to people, which is what I want in a cancer doctor, first and foremost, all that stuff still super important.
Yeah, I guess to add on to Dr. Oliver's comments, in addition to, I know this is supposed to just focus on radiation oncology interviews, but don't forget that you also need to take your prelim interviews seriously as well. I think in a lot of ways this year, some of your transitional year and prelim interviews will probably be just as competitive as the radiation oncology interview process. So I think some applicants may take those interviews a little bit lighter, and I've had some other friends of mine who ended up matching into a pretty competitive specialty and then having to SOAP into a PGY1 prelim position. So I think just be aware that you need to be just as serious about radiation oncology interviews as you are about your prelim interviews as well.
Yeah, I would just say, just to make sure you take it seriously. You know, just because you're sitting on your couch or in your bedroom or wherever you are, you know, dress the part so that you know, feel, you know, as you would on an interview day. You know, make sure you prepare questions ahead of time. That's a really important thing, I think. You know, I always think it's good to go to the website of the program that you're interviewing and
100%.
know a little bit about it, so that you can, you know, that's a great way to stand out. If you walk in and say, you know, hey, you know, Dr. Fields, you know, what disease site do you treat? You know, initially, just right off the bat, I'm going to be like, oh, you know, not like an egotistical maniac, but just, you know, I just think you should know, like, you know, the basics of what the people are that you're going to meet, and the program coordinators are going to prepare you. I know that mine does a great job of sending out who you're going to meet and in what order. And she usually even sends a blurb. So just take the time to like read that material, and prepare some questions for the residents. When I was interviewing, the main things I was thinking about were, are the residents happy? Would I be happy to be a part of this group? And if I join this group, will I be able to get a really good job? And I didn't even know what a really good job meant, because I didn't know, you know, what I would end up doing, whether it was private, academic, or I didn't even know all the spectrum of in between. But it was important to me to assess what jobs people got, and were they all over the country in all different types of practices, so that you know that your options are open. So make sure you have that sort of preparation prior to doing your interview.
I would add, as a thought, I'm just anticipating now what we will see, is that you choose your space that you're going to do it well. You're dressed in a suit like you would for an interview, but you put behind you something that's not distracting, that you know where your camera is, so that you can make eye contact with the people that are interviewing you, because that's actually super duper important in a regular interview. That feeling of connection and eye contact, that you're doing the nonverbals, that you're leaning into the interview thing, that you're not, you know, I've interviewed people here who put their feet up, even on the chair, while we're chatting, and you know, all those things portray a lack of interest. And you'll have to think about that more, because you won't be in the stressful situation of being you know, at somebody else's hospital in somebody else's office. You're going to be in your own personal space, and you should probably make it as neutral as you can, and remember all the key things about where your camera is, and lean into the process as much as you can.
How do we evaluate the interpersonal interactions amongst faculty and residents, and the overall departmental culture on virtual interviews?
Wow, I mean, I think programs have to show it to you. And if they don't, then you've got to assume that it's probably not the best. I think, you know, just like I think Comron said at the beginning, that residents are making this effort. You know, no matter whether it's, you know, before interviews, during, after it, at any point, having the residents get together and make this effort really does say something about the residents. And I think it's quite easy to watch a group of people and see if they have a connection, see if they actually hang out outside of work, if they like each other, if they know anything about each other. And so that kind of thing is really important. So programs really should be making an effort to do these things. And again, I think I would really watch for programs that aren't doing that. As far as faculty, it might be a little bit more difficult, but it's certainly fair game to ask the residents these things. It's a good question. You can always ask, you know, if there's someone you connect with on the interview, you know, what do you do outside of work? Are you friends with the people you work with? You know, I think although the virtual interviews shouldn't be that different, we may actually need to be asking and telling a bit more than usual, because of the limitation of not actually physically being there and getting that feel.
Yeah, just to echo Dr. Field's comments, I think, reaching out to individual residents is a good way to get a good feel. And, residents can usually give you an idea of whether, they go out as a group and, are like a closer knit resident group, and kind of how the logistics of clinic are, and, how is their connections with their attendings as well. So I think just reaching out to individual residents is a really good way to go. I know I did that when I was applying. If I, had a resident that I talked with a lot on interview day, and I had their email address, I would reach out to them and, ask them some questions that I had that were lingering on. So that's a good way to do it.
Great. A couple questions have come up about research. So the importance of research this cycle, and will unfinished research projects because of the pandemic be looked at unfavorably?
This is also in the AMC guidance as well. In general, I think that people's expectations for research have been adjusted. Again, I didn't think it was right, but that's how it was. For a while, people did a lot of research in the field. The only thing it really told you was that they had spent a lot of time thinking about whether they wanted to be a radiation oncologist. But I think research per se doesn't tell you that that person's going to be a good radiation oncologist in your department. So I think it's not a problem. And if you're able to address the idea that you are committed to the field, that bypasses that need for that. So I think some of those stupid criteria, like step one, how many publications that you've had, a letter from the name that everybody knows, all those things in terms of their importance are vastly diminished this year and generally. And should they have always been diminished? Yeah, they probably should have always been diminished. But anyway, here we are now making these adjustments. So I don't know if Emma has more thoughts on that.
No, I agree. I mean, it does make it harder for us because, we have these sort of traditional standards. We're supposed to look at a step one and number of first author publications and letters of recommendation, like who are they from? And it's like all thrown out the window. But, we're lucky because we're a small specialty. I always read every single application. I don't screen or filter by any kind of criteria. So as long as we continue to actually pay attention to what the content of the application is, and less, some of those check boxes, I think we're going to find great people who are going to make great radiation oncologists. And honestly, a lot of the projects are just for the resume, which is really unfortunate. And I felt the same way when I was in your position. I was, scrambling to finish this manuscript, which ironically was on GYN, radiation oncology, which is what I do. But I look back at that paper and kind of think it's funny because I really didn't know what I was doing and had no idea where I would end up. So, I think if you get the opportunity to be involved in something, immerse yourself and learn as much of it, as much from it as you can. But I think, it's much more important that you learn from it. And then when you're subsequently interviewed, you can actually talk about what you're doing and what you've gotten from it, than having those bullet points on your ERAS application.
That underlying thing, which I think, unless you're program director, you don't understand this, the anxiety of a program director or a department, is that in my department, we've had this happen a couple times where people have matched in, and then during their intern year, they fall in love with ER or pulmonary medicine or something else. And so they pull a quick side thing and switch specialties. They jump into pulmonary medicine, and that puts a hole in that class. It makes your class look like you didn't match. It's so much pain for the program and for the program director that they try to avoid it at all costs. In a small department where you take 2 or 3, it's such a big hole that we are adverse to experiencing that. So we look for ways to show that you're not going to do that. And that's through this dedication. And, you know, if you spend 100 hours working on a paper for RadOnc, then you seem pretty committed. So I guess we just have to keep looking for other endpoints that prove your dedication. Would you agree with that, Emma? I don't know if you've had that. We have.
I haven't had that happen. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying holds true no matter what. I mean, it just is that next step. But we understand. I mean, the pandemic happened. You all got sort of shut out of even coming to your medical schools. So, you know, what we're saying sort of holds true for, you know, just your work ethic and your, you know, your productivity as a medical student. But we know this year is different. And so it's another thing that I think would be really nice to include in your personal statement. You know, instead of having that section under publications, you can always just add a paragraph and say, you know, I've been really fortunate or excited to work on this, this, and this. I hope to continue it. And here's the reason, you know, or we don't need to know the reason. We know the reason. But, you know, explain that your section, you know, isn't reflective of what you've actually done. So I think, you know, if anything, this year, this cycle, this format is going to make us all actually be more upfront with each other.
Are there plans to reduce the number of residency spots this year, and will programs continue to use SOAP to fill open positions?
This is such a hot topic. I wish that there was, you know, it would make sense to me that if you have a resource that's very valuable, that the U.S. invests in through tax money, you know, as a medical student and what you become, that they should have the right to divide up that resource in a reasonable way that benefits the whole of society, but that's not the case. There is no way to cut back slots. And we all agree as program directors that it seems like we haven't too many. The manifestation of that has not been that there's not enough jobs for the graduating classes, but we worry that if the trajectory continued, that would be the case. Thus far, we haven't seen, besides sporadic situations, that to be the case. But I have talked to everybody that I can talk to about it, and it's protected through, what's the name of that law? The, drawing a blank.
Antitrust, I believe.
That is it, yes. Yeah, through antitrust laws, we're not allowed to cut them back because of lack of jobs. And the minute you bring it up, everyone panics. And so we all know what needs to happen. And the focus has been, Emma is joining the RRC, the ACGME, and the focus has been, how can we make sure that we're training the best residents possible and improving the criteria by which we choose a residency program for continued numbers and expansion has been the way for us to say, well, we can't control numbers, but we have to produce the highest quality residents that are able to take care of the American population of cancer patients the best. And if we're not doing that, then we need to get some of these criteria in place. And that may naturally pare down programs that are not strong, that open for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's right, Emma? That's how we're currently trying to tackle this intractable problem?
Yeah, I mean, some people were even more upfront about it. I know that Pragan Das at MD Anderson, I mean, they matched one less than what they normally do. They cut their class size. And some people were very like upfront about that and had the support of their chairman or chairperson. I was going to do sort of part 2 of that question, the SOAP. I feel really strongly about the SOAP. You know, if you don't match, you know, that it's life. And, you know, I just really feel like we should be filling our slots with people who want to be radiation oncologists. This was my first time going through SOAP, and I read so many derm and ortho applications. I mean, it was unreal. And, you know, as much as I'm sure they're great people and may even, you know, do well in our specialty, you know, I think we should try and really foster people who are interested in radiation oncology and stay committed to that, so that our patients get people who, you know, want to take care of oncology patients, who want to be in the clinic, who want to do procedures, you know, whatever part of radiation oncology it is that you love and excites you. So, you know, whatever it is we can do or can't do with the laws, I think, you know, it's more of a sort of a supply and demand thing, and we should stay true to, you know, modifying our supply based on the demand from medical students, and really not taking in sort of the overflow after that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also point out there was a really good editorial from Dr. Fields and Dr. Oliver and several other program directors in practical radiation oncology this month that actually goes into pretty good detail into this topic. So I would
That's right.
I would definitely recommend reading that even further if you have additional questions.
And then what do you anticipate that the job market might look like when this year of M4s is graduating from residency?
I think it's going to be good. I know that's going to cause a lot of angst. My optimism creates angst in groups. But, you know, the principles of why radiation oncology is a good specialty haven't changed. What we're involved with hasn't changed. We're involved in oligometastatic disease. Our field is continuing to modernize. And we're possibly getting involved in cardiac ablation things. The demand for our specialty during the pandemic was fantastic. And many of our specialties that have more invasive procedures all admired us, and we, I think, expanded some of our how other specialties thought about us. So I think if you're coming in now, you're going to be in a class where there's going to be a portion of that class that didn't have a established interest in radiation oncology, and you're going to be highly competitive against that group because you're going to train in a fantastic place, and you're going to find, in my opinion, a good job. When I graduated and went into radiation oncology, the job, it was equally as bad. In fact, when I came to interview here at Mayo, the senior residents came with me and said, don't go in this field. There's no jobs. It's dying. You're making a huge mistake. Quick, get out of it while you can. And, you know, I love the field, and it has been fantastic to me. And I wouldn't change it. And I know Emma feels the same way. I wouldn't change it. And so there's this idea of being counterculture, like even in investing, people tell you if people are selling, then you should buy. When people are buying, you should sell. And I do think some of that applies here. If you're a great applicant, when you finish your residency, you're going to be highly competitive for the jobs that are going to be there because you have a persistent interest in radiation oncology for the right reasons. So that's my optimistic take on it. This next year is going to be garbage because of COVID. The job market's garbage for every medical specialty.
Right.
But radiation oncology is not exclusive to that problem. So.
Yeah,
and it fail every single year. The graduating residents say, "Oh, the job market's terrible." I mean, Dr. Oliver just voiced that. That's happened the same when I was graduating. The last 3 to 4 years that I can remember, all the senior residents said it. I think it just, you know, you have to remember that you really have to go somewhere where there is a linear accelerator and an established practice. It's not like bringing your stethoscope and your medical bag and setting up shop as a family practice doctor. You know, you do have to have some flexibility. If you have a region of the country or a disease site that you really want to treat, that's great, but maybe not both. But I think that's true. I think that's true with, you know, any specialty. You know, the more sort of tight you get in medicine, I think we're an invaluable part of the oncology realm. I think we're by far the smartest people at the tumor boards. You know, we do a fantastic job of taking care of all kinds of cancer patients. We know the most about pediatrics all the way to geriatrics. and then also broadening into benign, as well as into combination therapy with other systemic agents. So I would not worry about not having enough jobs. I'm also optimistic. I love my job every day, even throughout this pandemic. I've loved coming into work, and I've been there every day, and don't think twice about it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, I applied 4 years ago to radiation oncology, and a lot of the concerns I hear today from medical students, I honestly had the same worries about the job market. I think almost everybody who's applying to radiation oncology had those concerns 4 years ago, and those concerns are probably the same today. But I can honestly say, looking back, I know I made the right decision. I was considering going into internal medicine at one point to pursue medical oncology, and I'm so glad that I chose to do radiation oncology. And I think it's important just to know that the markets, you know, it's hard to predict 6 years from now what the market's going to be like, and that if you are, you know, really passionate about radiation oncology, I don't think that should necessarily deter you.
And hypofractionation is good for patients. And you hear this mentioned as though like, oh, that's the doom that's causing a less need for radiation oncologists. The minute someone says that to you, you can tell what their motivation is. It's not about taking the best care for the patient. And so, yeah, and you just have to remember that if you join the specialty, I hope you go into it because you want to take good care of patients. The reality is we're paid very well, and we have very good, we don't have an inpatient service that we have to cover on holidays and weekends. It's a great job. And you know, it takes a little bit more work to find the right job for you, but over time you can migrate into that. And you know, the same is true for your friends that are MBAs and lawyers. You know, they have to work a little bit to get that job that they really want, and they don't think anything of that. But for physicians, we expect when we finish the residency program, you know, it's like breaking the tape, and you know, all the glitter drops, and it takes a bit more work because it's such a good specialty. And I'm always feel very, you know, blessed that I only have maybe 10 inbox messages when my internal medicine friends have 100. So that's my 2 cents.
Great. Well, it's 7 o'clock. If any of you have any closing remarks, go ahead. I just want to say thank you so much to Dr. Oliver, Dr. Hassanzadeh, and Dr. Fields for providing us your wisdom tonight. I think it's invaluable for applicants, and I'm also really excited to see all the enthusiasm from medical students about the match this year, and I'm very excited about our future.
Yeah, please reach out to us. Let us know what questions you have, and if you're interested, we're here to help you.
Yeah, find a specialty that matches your personality, and you'll be happy, I think.
Thank you for hosting this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
This
thank
was
you
really
so much,
great. Very well
Dr.
done.
Fields
Very
and Dr.
organized.
Oliver. I just wanted to put in a small plug for ACRO. Do we mind going to the next slide? So just wanted to let everybody know that as a medical student, you can join ACRO. It is free to do that. You can just go to acro.org, click the Join Today button, and fill out the form, and you will become a member. So it's pretty much that easy, and you should do it. Also, I wanted to put a plug in for our ACRO mentorship program, especially this year, given that, you know, we're in COVID times and it's really hard to learn more about the field. I think mentors are really important in our field, and ACRO mentorship program is a really good way to learn more about the field, and you'll get paired with residents and attendings who can teach you more about the field and help you along the process. And lastly, please follow us on Twitter at ACRO Resident. So thank you so much.
All right, everyone have a good evening.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. That was really fun, Emily. You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you so much. I thought it was really fun. So I'm really glad that we did this.
Yep.
I would have loved this as a student. I think this is so great.
Absolutely.